It's been quite a while since I've done a video, and for one reason or another, it hasn't proved possible. But I've got a short while at the moment free, in which I can produce this. So yeah, my situation at the moment is that I can't play any big games. I've got a guest in the room where I would normally play games, have my games set up. So I was looking around for a small game to play. But last year when we went on holiday, no, 2 years ago I think, maybe even three now, I took the Ancient series. I downloaded the Ancient series, which is available on some website or other. And that's kind of like A4 sized maps, and each sort of unit's about 1,000 fellows and something like that, and that was ideal for that situation. I was looking for something similar to that. I couldn't find anything quite so small, but what I did find is Men at Arms, which is from Strategy and Tactics, from 1990. It's by Dunnigan and Noffy, so they're kind of like venerable designers. Dunnigan started the magazine, of course, and this was, I think it was generally considered like maybe not their swan song, but it was kind of like the fading glory of their designing years, because it was not well received. There's some production problems in that you have 6 double-sized map sheets, A4 map sheets, but if you can see here, there's the edge of a square, and there's the edge of the sheet, but they're not all printed like that. Here in this sheet, the squares don't quite, this part of the squares off the sheet. This is the second sheet, and so, but they don't line up with any of the other map sheets. So, you know, like that edge or an equivalent on another sheet is not big enough to fill out that square. So you get situations like this. You get gaps that you just have to play with. But that's all right. The things, I don't want to sort of get too bogged down in the details of the game, but the point that I really wanted to make was that generally, from what I've read, it's on the web and so forth, that it was felt that this wasn't a successful game. However, I find it perfectly suited for my needs at the moment, in that it's very simple. The rules are 4 pages long. I've actually got the Moves magazine, which offers a errata to these rules, which would probably make it about 5 pages long if you fitted in all the errata. But to be honest, I didn't really find I needed the errata. There's also, in that Moves magazine, there's this whole set of advanced rules, and I don't find those interesting at all, because essentially what this game is about is the rules are very simple, because they boiled it down to you get the units, very generic units. This is the setup of the Battle of, what was that? Marathon. No, that was the Battle of Leuctra, which was, yes, the Theban army against the Spartans, and you set up the generic map sheets. So in this game, these rivers were all fordable and so forth. It just ignored the roads, so this was just essentially a plain with a few sort of low streams running through it. And so you set up the geomorphic maps, you put your counters down, and then it's very limited in what you can do, because essentially the battles in this period of Men of Arms, which they've called from something like, I don't know, 2000 BC? No, because we don't really have records of those battles, do we? So we got the Battle of Kadesh, 1294 approximately BC, all the way up to, well, they've actually included a scenario. You get 30 scenarios with the game in the magazine. They've actually included a scenario number, 32 scenarios in 1818 in Natal, South Africa. And so that was the Zulu fighting, which is still this kind of similar Men at Arms style, where essentially you line up your units. You might have like a cavalry division, say here, or the division of units here, and maybe another division here, so you might like have two wings and a centre, or they might all be in one long line, another line behind perhaps the line behind is cavalry and the line in front's infantry, or the line in front's archers, the line behind's cavalry, or they might be mixed in together. And essentially what happens is you say, right, there I am, then your opponent sets up his army, and so you depend on the terrain, and then you say go. And you can release a battle line, and the battle line will just head straight forwards into the enemy, and then it just kind of basically will try and keep as much of a cohesive mass either lapping around the enemy or filling in gaps as they occur. Then you might have to release a second battle line, or the two lines might have gone forward as one. And that's pretty much all you can do unless you have a good leader. Now, a good leader can command units independently from many leaders. So, this will be my third game I played, but quite a few I've looked at. Many leaders have zero command, which they can only command units in their own hex independently. Everything else can only move as the battle line. Good leaders, like the leader of the Thebans, he was given 3 ratings, so he could command units within 3 hexes of himself independently, so he could kind of like have a very mobile reserve as long as he moved with the reserve, but then he's not available to rally other troops. So the game is very much about your setup and your position, and there's a limited amount that the leader, i.e. you, is represented by that leader counter, can do once you said go. I mean, you can, if the leader's off over here and he's still got a line here, then he can give a signal and that line is released. So you don't have to release all your battle lines at once. You can release them as and when you like. But still, and I think it makes it quite simple. You don't have too many sort of complicated rules about manoeuvring and stuff like that. And nor for the combat, because people just kind of head straight on. The only variability really is charging cavalry and archers. And I like it for what it is. It's very suitable for me at the moment because it's simple like that. And I think it's successful. Although I guess people were frustrated with it because you felt like you don't do a lot, because you kind of release a battle line and then it's just about rolling for the combats with not much decision making you can make. It's more just finding out what happens. So it could be kind of frustrating, maybe more frustrating when you're against an opposing player, because you'll just be kind of like, okay, we've done all we can, now we just got to roll through what's happening. But as a solo player, it's fine, because a lot of solo players are it's not about, I'm trying to get the edge on my opponent, can I, maybe this is going to be the final tactic, the final move, whatever that will do it. It's more about, this is an interesting situation, I wonder what happens in it. And this is really what happens in this game, is you set up the situation at the beginning and then you kind of see what happens within it. Because, at the beginning you already think, right, if you've got, say, 2 battle lines, I'm going to release the second battle line either once the first battle line is destroyed or it's making headway, something like that. So, at the beginning you've already really made most of your decisions, and then my reserve, if I've got any, I will take them where they're needed. So, and that will become apparent as the game plays out. So I think that it's probably, although people said, there's not enough detail and it cannot simulate this battle well against that battle, that may be, but at least for the general flavour of all of that period. And there are a few special rules for, say, like Roman legions and feudal cavalries and stuff. I don't have much complexity, but just little twists. I think for the broad span of that period, it kind of feels right for me. You position your forces, and then it's down to those masses. You set them off against each other, and the competence of your army against the other army is really what seals the fate. It's not so much kind of like cunning exploitation of gaps and having superior command control so that you can cause those things. The superior commander with superior command control, who can gather a force around him, bigger or lesser depending on his ability, will probably take the day. Although it's interesting, but you know, that's the special factor on top of the main clash of arms of this broad period. But it's interesting actually, because the game I just played, so we had the Thebans were blue with their 3-span leader against the Spartans, who were red with a 1-span leader, and the Theban leader died, and yet they still actually won. I thought, oh no, on about you get 20 turns a game, and the first turn only actually starts when your battle lines have actually commenced hitting each other. About the 6th turn or something, 5th turn maybe, the Theban leader was killed, and I thought that must be it, over for them. Yet they had already sort of created enough momentum in their present attack that it had disrupted the Spartan line, that even with leaderless they won the day. And that, you know, say in a modern army, that you lose the leader, you lose the command unit, and everyone on the ground's like, what do I do now? I'm radioing in. What do I do? Do you know what I mean? Quick, we're on our own. It's a disaster. In here, you couldn't see very far. There's a mass all around you, noise, dust, shouting. So once it had started, you just did your best, kept pressing on. Or if you felt that it was all at its worst, you legged it in the opposite direction until maybe somebody came up to you, managed to turn you about. And so I think that was nicely captured there. So the Thebans won the day, only to find at the end of it that their glorious leader had fallen, and they had no knowledge of that. So anyway, that's just a quick intro. I'm going to set up my third actual battle. And many of these are quite unbalanced, because this one, it was favoured for the Thebans, because they're kind of like, they tried to make them, rather than balance the scenarios, they just tried to make them as historically accurate as possible. So I'm about to play my first apparently well-balanced scenario, which is scenario 15. In the they suggest complexities and length, so low complexity and length. I'm starting with those, then I'll move to moderate, and then there's 3 of high complexity and length. So I'm moving through in that order. So this is actually scenario number 15, but fairly low complexity and length, or at least predicted length. But this is the first balanced one. It's felt to be balanced, and it's the Battle of Tours. So it's 10th of October 732 Anno Domini, on a now uncertain site between Poitiers and Tours in southwestern France. So we have the Franks, perhaps 25,000 infantry, who will be the Reds. Each unit is going to represent 1,000 men, against the Muslims, perhaps 20,000 cavalry. So we've got Charles Martel, the Hammer, versus Abd-er-Rahman. And I think, as I remember from reading, because you get a historical note on all the battles, which is wonderful, that this happened on a so essentially the Muslims accepted battle in an unfavourable position for them. So although normally their sort of cavalry would probably have ridden all around the Frankish force and harassed them to pieces, they weren't able to in this battle, so it results in a more equal contest. So here's the setup for the Battle of Tours. This is the this will be the Frankish side. So you can see they have hills here, some forests here. So they set up on these 3 map boards. You can see that they would obviously be able to secure their flanks by the hills and forests here. Although then we're faced with some masses of forests here and this stream running through. So I'm not sure, it might be more advisable for them to set up here. So they've got forest here and here, stream here, so essentially their flanks are secured. And looking from the other way around is how the Muslim leader would have seen it. So obviously, this is just very rough geography of the area, but essentially they have an open plain to set up in. So they've accepted battle here because they were being pursued, and because of their large train of booty, they'd essentially been on a reconnaissance and force ransacking France, Franconia. They were unable to elude Charles Martel's army, decided to accept battle, but Charles Martel has got the better position. However, the Franks set up first, so the Muslims can then deploy depending on their opponent's setup. Just a quick note on the counters here and the counter types. So again, this is a great pick up and go game for me because like I said, there's not a huge map area. Well, actually, it's bigger than that's 6 A4 sheets. Then this was an A4 sheet which has the turn track, and then this is the break point track. So you track the sort of overall morale and strength of the army, and when each army reaches a certain point, it will break. Everyone disrupts and starts more or less fleeing. But I chopped that in half so I can fit it on this standard, clip picture frame. And that's all the counters. Okay, I've got some out here, and then these are kind of odds and ends. These you get 2 leaders, 2 guns, because within this area, at a certain point, you reach the use of cannons and things. Some skirmishers, and I think that's it. Then the rest of the units are all detailed. I just run out of recording space, and that's why one reason why I haven't been recording so much lately is because it's such a pain in the ass for me to download everything off the phone and free up recording space. You know what it's like, you've got a son and you're always recording and taking photos and things, so my card fills up very quickly. Anyway, never mind. So this might get cut, but anyway, the point we were at was that we've got our unit types here. So it ranges from first class spear or pike troops like hoplites, Swiss pikemen. Then there's second class, which sort of rough and ready militia types. You've got first class sword troops, second class sword troops or axemen. Bowmen, 2 classes of bowmen, 2 classes of cavalry. In fact, and then there's also mounted archers, so 3 classes of cavalry. Skirmishers, and then the leaders and those cannons I mentioned at the bottom there. So that's all the troops you have that sort of more or less cover everything you need. Very nice and short and sweet, and they're all represented here. So without more ado, I'll get my counters out for this game. So here we have the units arrayed. We have each of these units is 1,000 men. So we got 20 units here, 20,000 Muslim cavalry, 6,000 horse archers, and then 14,000 kind of second class cavalry troops. So that's not to say they weren't great cavalry, but they're not heavily armed cataphracts, that kind of thing. And then their 1 leader counter here, who is Al-Rahman is a 0 leader. So he will be able to command independently only units in his own hex, and depending on the scale, you could have up to 3 units in a hex. But because this is a high scale, as it were, 1,000 men per hex, and it doesn't say what the distance each hex is, but there's no stacking without. I mean, you can stack, but then there's disadvantages. I think you lose folks. So he's only going to be able to command 1 independent unit. On the other side, you've got 25,000 men. There's 10,000. There's 15,000 sort of second-rate rough and ready swords and axemen. So they're not first-rate like Roman cohorts or Greek phalanxes and so forth, but decent enough. And then you've got 10,000 pikemen, and then their leader here, he's a 2 leader, so he's going to be able to command quite a few units around himself independently, which is going to be very handy. The other thing is that when you're thinking about how to set up, this is a very important chart, the combat unit capability. So we look at what have we got. Well, we've got S2s, swords as it were 2s, and pike 2s. There's, as an attacker, that's the Franks. The pikes and the sword 2s don't gain any benefit, but as a defender, the pike 2s against cavalry. Sorry, I should zoom in a bit there, shouldn't I? So second-rate pikes against even first-rate cavalry get a left shift, which is to the defender's benefit. So that is going to be very telling against these hordes of cavalry. So those pikemen are going to come in very handy here. Against the S2 swordsmen, as it were, then the cavalry, they're all treated as C2 here. The cavalry attacking, they're going to get 2 to the right, so the cavalry are going to cut them up very handily. Yeah, so the Franks get no benefit on the attack, but the Muslims will get benefit attacking the swordsmen and a detriment attacking the pikesmen. So that is going to have a significant say in how the battle goes and how particularly the Franks are going to set up. It's disappointing they cannot stack, because if these then were stacked with those, although only the top unit, they're sort of considered the forward unit in the square, can attack and defend. You can move units in a square. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. That will decide how we set up. Let me think about that. Okay, this is my Frankish setup. It's quite experimental, and it's quite interesting what you can actually do, considering the kind of restrictions of the rules, in that battle lines have to be formed of adjacent figures. So essentially what I've done, if I come above, maybe you can see it a bit better. You can't really see there, so I'll zoom in on a representative group. And you can see essentially what I've done. Well, it's still a different zoom, so I guess it's not too much light, but I think if I get more, we're going to get clear. Essentially what I've done is this front line is pikemen. And because we have very sticky zones of control, so all the 3 hexes in front of them, in fact all the hexes, squares around them, are a zone of control, so any enemy unit entering that has to stop. So I can have 2 gaps between each pikeman, and they will stop any enemy units. As we saw, they're going to be very handily defensive against the cavalry. So I'm thinking this was thick enough on the right to hold us up the cavalry too much. We got some clumps here and here, but I thought they're thin enough, I better defend them. And then what I have done is I have brought back 2 divisions here. So those are going to be stationary, because that is not a battle line. They're not all adjacent, so they cannot move. Full stop. Oh, and I had one pipe set slightly back here because I thought, as you'll see, I've got 2 gaps, 2 squares there, 2 squares there, 2 squares there, and these ones are filled by my divisions. These ones aren't. Fortunately, there's a sort of a town or village or camp there, which is a bit defensive, so I put a spare pike unit there and defence. I actually have one more pike unit remaining who's here with the mobile reserve. These 3 swordsmen and that pike unit with the leader on top are my mobile reserve. So Charles Martel has got them and within his range. Then he's also got these 2 divisions. So these are battle lines. So they're very short lines. In fact, they're what we would call columns. So very short lines, 3 ranks deep. And they can move as one mass each, and I can release 1 at a time. They do not. In fact, they will not go together because they are not adjacent. And so the idea is that my pikemen are going to hold the cavalry off. So I have an impenetrable front, impenetrable, and we will just essay out at the cavalry as they try to come at us, and hopefully with some disruptions on my pikes, I can take them out. The massive flaw in my plan is that battle lines can only move forward. So if we have cavalry coming down here, there's nothing I can do against them unless I release my reserve. But this is for fun, so I'm just trying out to see what various things can happen. I mean, I could think it through a bit more, and I might do in a minute and change my mind, but this is my thought at the moment. Because of course the other alternative is I just have a solid line of pikes here and then rows of swordsmen behind. But the trouble with that is, in this scenario there is no stacking, so there's no way that a line behind can move through the line in front. If they had enough movement points to do that, so they could, because you only have to check it at stacking restriction at the end of the phase, but it costs 5 movement points to move into a hex, to enter or leave a stack. So that would be 5 movement points to go in, plus say 2 movement points, because each clear square is 2 movement points, the diagonals are 3. So say that would be 7 movement points, and then likewise 7 to move out. And the swordsmen only have a movement allowance of 8, so they could only move in, and then they're beyond stacking restrictions, which means one of the units has to be eliminated. So I cannot have any stacking. So, to use my pikes as defensive, I have to have them in front. And if they're in front, I cannot move through them. So I felt the only thing I could do is something like this, where I have gaps in my pike line, which I can move through. What perhaps I could have done is moved out my fellows in maybe I could do this. Maybe this would be wiser. So I have a single battle line covering the whole length. And they would move as one piece. But essentially, because these guys don't have enough movement, the line has to try and stay complete. So these would go, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And these would have to go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. We have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there'd be gaps in the line, or else the line would sort of be contorted. Maybe it would, shrink up as it moved through. And as it went forward, it would have to try and close the gaps to keep one solid mass of a line. So that is an idea. That is doable. If so we imagine a line behind sort of swarming around these gaps and reforming on the other side of the pikemen. Perhaps I should try that, because otherwise, essentially what I think we will find is that the cavalry will just, if we're all bunched up like this, the cavalry will just mass on that flank, won't they? Eventually they would break through. By that time Charles would have got his reserve in, but then these battle lines would have no one to attack. So then Charles would just have to sort of move to each battle line in turn, and in fact move with each one separately. So I don't think that's going to work. I think my original plan is not going to work, and I'm going to do this second plan. They're going to have to move through the pikes. But you can see I've still got a gap on my left, unless I stick the reserve. But I really did want a reserve. See, and that's a pike, that's all my swordsmen. My alternative is to move the line forward a bit and shrink it a bit, so it starts on that wood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's as many, 15,000 swordsmen. maybe that's the way I should do it. Anyway, you see, this is what I like about this game, is deciding what to do first. You are the commander. You say, "There's the enemy force. They're massing up. We have accepted battle." And that's kind of what it was in those days. You know, you either your foe is approaching, and so either you say, "Okay, I will accept battle," or you disappear and you try to get away. In this case, he didn't really have the opportunity to get away, so he had to accept battle. And then, so it's kind of like by agreement. There's not often like an ambush or a surprise or a kind of like a meeting engagement. Meeting engagements very rarely happen ever in any era, as I understand. But because I think the concept of accepting battle is you say, right, yeah, I think this is where we're going to have it, and we both, each opposing commander knows it's going to take a while to set our array up, to dress our ranks, and to get ready for the combat. So often you would find that two forces would say meet, or one would come upon the other, and then neither of them move, and so it's like, okay, so the next day we're going to fight, and say the one that had just arrived would settle down for camp, and they kind of had chosen the ground, and then it would be at the morning of the next day that they set themselves up, each of them taking a while, and maybe take a couple of hours, maybe even till midday before either side launched at the other. Okay, I've chosen, for better, for worse. I have mixed lines, so pikes, swords, pikes, swords, pikes, swords, alternating here. So we're flanked. This is impassable stream, obviously passable on that bridge, but they could try and come around over here, but then so we got the front battle line here, and then this is the reserve battle line. Because you can count diagonals, he's got a 2 hex command range. That's 2 square, sorry, 1, 2. So he can command this whole block as an independent command, which means he can move it wherever he likes. It doesn't just have to be released and move forward in a battle line. These ones, if it is moved as a battle line, these ones will go with it. Otherwise, they will just remain where they are. They're essentially, I thought of having them here. And maybe I still will. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So in case the cavalry concentrate here, I've got a second offensive line there. They're essentially immobile. So we got mixed, and then this block is also mixed. Pike, sword, pike, and then all the back row are swords. So I'm hoping that the pikes, the swordsmen, obviously we're going to get holes with the swordsmen, but then the pikes will hold. So these swordsmen will be able to fight. The pikes will be able to fight effectively as well on attack as the swords, but they will hold the defence even though the swordsman may go. The pike's zone of controls will hold the line. That is the idea. And now I'll move to the Muslim force. Okay, so I have set the Muslims up. I feel uncomfortable just calling them Muslims because these are Franks. I'm not calling them Christians, but we could say that. Christians, Muslims. These have come over from Spain, but I guess really they're from Northern Africa. I don't know exactly where. Sons of the desert. Anyway, so what I've decided is trying to use the terrain to our advantage, in that we got that clump of woods here. So I've got essentially just one line of cavalry. These cavalry look different, but that's just because of the counter mix. They represent the same, so they're all the same type of cavalry. The counter mix doesn't supply the right type of counters for every single scenario you have to sort of chip in with some others as supplements, but that's not a problem. You can't really complain for a magazine game with 32 scenarios provided. And the first ones that are killed I'll swap them for those. So it's soon not a problem. But this front row is different. They are mounted archers. So the idea is they're going to move in first. They have an archery range of 2. So they will move into within 2 hexes. That would be the first battle line that is released. They will move into within 2 hexes, try and create disruptions. They have to, according to the rules, they have to continue on to engage, so that they will then either be engaged by the opponent or they will engage themselves. And as they are getting disrupted and sort of broken up, then hopefully they've caused enough disruptions that then I can send in my second line, and that will secure the day for us. In fact, yeah, originally I wanted to, and I think I will do it. I'm going to keep this line separate, so that's more just a flank guard. We don't really want to get broken up in the trees there, but it's a kind of a flank guard in case this line comes on completely. So essentially that's my attack force, and the leader's got 1 mobile array of 1,000 cavalry there on his hex. So it's not much of a plan. I mean, really what I'd like is for these to move up, stop here, fire and come back. The rules don't allow that, which actually is a good point. So they're not going to be able to use they're going to have to be the second row, because then they can move up as 1 battle line, and they can use their archery to combine with, if a leader's present. So no, yeah. So they could only combine their archery with these fellows in their attack if they were stacked or a leader's present. So as it is, they will have to just fire over independently, because there's no combined attacking, so each unit attacks separately in this, which can be helpful, because say if this unit and this unit are attacking the same guy, he might disrupt him, and then he gets a second disruption, which is either like a rout or a elimination. But you cannot, even if they're attacking the same guy, you cannot add their strengths together. Okay, I think this video is going to cut out really quick again, but anyway, I'm going to start. So get my turn marker there. We don't start recording turns until there's a first disruption. Break points of each side. Yes, that's interesting. Is so the Franks, their break point is at 40 units, and the break points of the Muslims are at 35 units. You measure that on their face-up combat strengths, and the strongest Frankish units are 3, so it's going to take 10 units before they break. The strongest Frankish units are 6, so 3, so that's 14 Frankish units, and there's a break, and 11 Muslim units, and there will be a break of their army. Anything else? Yes. Oh yes, the other interesting thing is the discipline. Now, discipline level, we need it now because we have to roll for initiative. Essentially, the discipline level of the Franks is 5. We roll on 2d6. Discipline, and that's kind of like morale, if you like. The discipline level of the Muslims is 7. You add the leader to that, so that we've got value 2 leader here. For initiative, you add the leader to it. So that's a 7, and so this is 0 plus 7 is 7. So they're both on 7, so equal for initiative. You roll each turn. But the Muslims will recover from disruptions more handily, as their discipline is firmer, stronger than the Franks. Now that is going to be very telling. So I think that's going to offset the advantage of the pikes. We shall see. So now I chose the distance of the Muslim army deliberately, in that whichever side goes first the Muslim will get the charge in, because if the Franks go first and they set off, they will not reach us, so we will be able to have a charge against them. Actually, I'm going to move them back 2 squares, because to get a charge bonus, you think you need 2 square range to go. Yeah, straight up. So I'll move these all back to. So essentially, if the Franks go first, they won't reach us, and we'll be able to charge them our next turn, or we go first and we'll be able to charge them before they get a go. So they will get a shock effect bonus on their first clash. Okay, so the initiative. So I think it's just highest first, and then after that you roll against. So say them. They've got 4 and 4. Okay, equal 10 versus. So they win the initiative. They decide whether to go first or not, and they're going to stay put. So the initiative passes to the Muslims Al Rahman, and he is sending his battle line straight in. So that's 1, 2. Oh no, hang on, I forgot. It's 2 points per square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I did want them to be here. Okay. After all. Okay. And basically I set up the archers. The archers could come. I said no unit can combine with another unit on combat, but missile units can. A, if they're stacked, which we can't do here, or B, if there's a leader, they're within leader range and adjacent to a unit that is adjacent to an enemy.